Politicians were mostly people who had too little morals and ethics to stay lawyers. George R. Martin, American author, television writer, and television producer. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. For tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Today, I have a guest. I'm going to bring on Rory Diamond. He is the council member here in Jacksonville for District 13. We're going to discuss some things that have popped up in the news about him lately regarding our budget. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Rory, how are you this morning?
I'm living the dream. How about you? Thanks for having me.
I guess this is a dream too, right? Like I didn't really think when I was younger that I would grow up to be a talking head, from my house. So like I guess this is kind of a dream as well.
There we go. Nothing like working from home.
I know, right? So work from home, get to see my family like all day long. I don't maybe to their chagrin, I don't know. Some days maybe. So, all right, good sir. So you've been in the news lately, and well, first and foremost, because the show doesn't necessarily, viewers, listeners and viewers of the show are not necessarily always in Jacksonville. So, kind of introduce yourself and kind of give a rundown of who you are for anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, sure. No, so I'm a Jacksonville City Councilman. If you're unfamiliar, the city of Jacksonville and Duval County are the same thing. We have consolidated government, so I'm also a county commissioner under the Florida Constitution. I'm a lawyer. I'm an Army JAG officer, Florida National Guard officer, and all around troublemaker in Jacksonville. For those who like big government, they don't like me.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm gonna play a news clip here that I think kind of summarizes some of the drama that's been happening lately, and then we can discuss it real quick.
Sounds
So
good.
let's get that up on the screen here. And there.
First at 11 on this Friday night, money to pay for the chief of diversity and inclusion could be cut from Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan's budget. Thank you for staying up with us tonight. I'm Anthony Austin.
And I'm Heather Crawford. We're glad you're with us. Mayor Donna Deegan chose Dr. Parvez Ahmed as part of her original leadership team after being inaugurated. Our Christina Burgess is following this developing story for us. And Christina, I know you spoke with several council members. What are they telling you tonight?
Well, yeah, guys, council member Rory Diamond tells me in his words that people are tired of being divided based off of race, gender, and DEI positions. Meantime, council member Matt Carlucci calling this removal short-sighted and political.
I think it's a step backwards. I think if you look at how the community feels, most people are in favor of diversity and inclusion efforts. So I think, again, consider the source. It is a political move.
In a 4-2 vote, Jacksonville City Council Finance Committee cut the $230,000 funding intended for Mayor Donna Deegan's Chief of Diversity and Inclusion. Dr. Parvez Ahmed was appointed as Director of Diversity and Inclusion by Mayor Deegan in 2023. Mayor Deegan took to social media, saying she's proud of Parvez's work and these actions will not stop her administration from championing Jacksonville's diversity. However, Councilmember Rory Diamond tells me DEI is only dividing the city.
The vast majority of the people here in Jacksonville are tired of being divided based on race and gender and other categories. And these DEI positions are exactly doing that.
Diamond plans on introducing an amendment to ensure that no money goes towards this position.
I'm going to write a law that essentially says you can't shift money around. It will be prohibitory. You cannot use it for any city money for DEI positions.
Councilmember Matt Carlucci,
I think is short-sighted and political.
Disagreeing with the removal and commending Ahmed's work.
He's one of the kindest people I know, and I think he's kind to everybody he knows. And to cut this position is such a shame, and I hope that we can get it refunded.
And 2/3 of council would have to vote to reincorporate this position. In downtown Jacksonville, Christina Burgess, First Coast News on your side.
All right. So let's dive right in here. There's a lot there that's going on. Let's kind of unpack it. What motivated you here?
Well, I just don't support on principle
Okay.
dividing people based on race, gender, who they go home to. It's just not a way I think we ought to be evaluating anybody in employment or housing or anything else. And so the city of Jacksonville, since Donna Deegan was elected, has had somebody who, quote unquote, is the chief of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't really care who has that position. I just don't think it should exist, because its entire purpose is to do exactly what I told you I think is wrong, which is to treat people differently based on immutable characteristics. And, everybody else is getting rid of DEI, like big corporate America slowly is getting rid of it. The Florida system has gotten rid of it. And now Jacksonville is just like delayed and trying to add it in here. And frankly, I just don't think people support it. And that's why the council stripped it out.
So let me ask you the one of the questions that I think is important here is when you say like, hey, people are tired of being divided and, they don't want this. What's the evidence for that?
Oh, sure. Well, all right. So if you look at polls across America and you ask questions like, do you think that a man should get a job if he's equally qualified as another woman applicant? And they'll say no. And then you ask it reversed and they'll say no. They don't believe that ought to be the way people are treated. Same thing with race. Same thing with almost every kind of like characteristic you go down that, big liberals love to check these boxes. You ask people, should we treat people differently because of these boxes? And they'll say no by huge margins. It's not like, it's close. It's like 80% no. Treat people the same on the color of their skin, for example. And that's what I'm talking about when people say they're tired of this stuff.
Gotcha. And so you wouldn't, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Just for the record, I oppose DEI, folks. So if you're watching, like I'm not like I'm going to try to ask some devil's advocate questions here, but at the end of the day, I oppose it personally for probably very similar reasons to Mr. Diamond here. Then again, you put that on top of the fact that I believe that government should be like really, really, really tiny, probably much smaller than any one of the city council members would ever dream of. So I'm the extreme one here, but we're gonna try to fish this out and see what we come up with. So when people elected the mayor, doesn't that kind of, and I don't want to say give her a blank check, but in a sense, like give her some sort of latitude to say, okay, we wanted this particular mayor, and with that mayor comes certain things. So wouldn't that kind of counter, maybe some of the polls and things that you're saying, at least here in Jacksonville?
Two things. First of all, the mayor didn't run on, hey, I'm going to treat people differently based on how they were born. She ran on this unity, bring people together, clean up government message. But that's what people voted for if they voted for message. The second thing is that it was a very fluky election we had in Jacksonville, where Republicans were essentially did a firing squad in a circle and knocked each other out, leaving the mayor totally unscathed by must have been $12 or $13 million that Republicans spent against each other. So no. Look, I don't think so. Yeah, the mayor has certain powers, and she's allowed to use those, but there was no mandate for treating people differently based on how they were born.
Got it. What did the chief of diversity and inclusion office? I can't remember the title exactly, but what did that position like? And speak fairly here. What did the position actually require of him or whoever's in it?
You say he did, but he still has a job through the fiscal year, and I guarantee you, the mayor is going to find another way just to repackage his job and keep him in city government doing the exact same thing. That's why I had to do this in two steps. In the federal government, you have an authorization and you have a budgetary line item, and you have to have both in order to spend federal money. In the mayor's view, the city of Jacksonville budget is all she needs is a budgetary line item somewhere, and she can spend it however she wants. I think that's wrong. I think that's illegal, but that's her view of the world. So I'm going to have to not only defund the position, which we did a couple of weeks ago, but also prohibit using any money to rehire someone in a position like that, which is, if you think about it, that's a ridiculous way to have to budget, to say, no, you can't use this. We really ought to only be spending money that's authorized.
Gotcha. And so back to my question, what did the position actually require of whoever is in it? Like what was their duties of any kind?
Excellent question. We asked this, and no job position, was put forward. So don't really know. So we asked the question of the mayor's chief of staff. He said, well, what did he do? And they gave things that the chief of diversity, equity, inclusion did. One was to consolidate the two MLK breakfasts, and the other was to create a Latino/Hispanic board and an LGBTQ board. Those are the big accomplishments for $300,000 that we heard about. So to me, like, the position shouldn't exist, even if it did exist. That makes no sense to pay someone $300,000 to do that. I've been told, separate and aside from official duties, that one of the things that this person was doing was literally trying to find places to insert diverse candidates over non-diverse candidates. And that's exactly what I'm saying we ought not to be doing, which is, treat people based on the job that they've done or the merit that we think they have, based on, some objective criteria, but don't go and literally try to pull, white males out of position and put somebody else in because you just want people who look different. To me, that's just wrong.
Right. No, I agree. And I think, if a black person, and we'll just use black people as an example here, if a black person is worthy of a job and, they have all the requirements, whatever those are, education, history, experience, whatever the case may be. And if they exceed, a white candidate, well, then they get the job. End of story. And then, I look at the white person, I say, well, I guess you should have more experience or you should try harder or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah.
Go work it out and come back and try again the next time. So even though I am against DEI, I am not against the idea of merit, including when that merit, may benefit a minority person. Like,
I think everybody, except for like some absolute terrible racists, agree with exactly what you just said. But it's even worse for minority candidates because you have incredibly qualified minority candidates getting jobs that they would have earned without DEI. And then people in their workforce and their customer base and their vendors are like, well, am I dealing with somebody who earned this job or is this a DEI candidate? And so that's totally unfair to a diverse candidate who otherwise is completely meritorious. And I think that's the second piece of the puzzle why DEI doesn't make any sense.
right. And that's one of the things that I've talked about in the past, just in general, saying like, this is one of the reasons why, like, I'm against reparations and every other thing, because what ends up happening is when you give something to another person, the people around them, maybe if it was taken from them in the case of, like, say, reparations or money, or if it was a position that was given to one person over another, then you have this extra level of scrutiny on that person or those people that I don't think is actually going to, build bridges between groups. I think it actually creates further problems. Like, hey, you know what? You got the job, now why can't you figure it out? And, or it emboldens the real racists to say, see, look,
Yep.
Everything all this crazy stuff that we've been saying, about, these people not being smart or whatever. Look, it's true. And it's like, no, it's not true. It's just that we have a bad system. So when your bill, and I haven't read the bill, I apologize. When your bill says that she cannot use money to, find money elsewhere, does that impede? Because I think somewhere along the line she had said like this is going to put Jacksonville to a halt or something like that. So it sounded to me like she was saying, it almost sounded like the bill would say you can't move any money around, or there was a significant limit that prevents you from doing other duties that may actually be useful. So is that the case?
No. So three different things that I've done. One is already done. It was an amendment to take the DEI director out of our budget. So that's just a 1-year thing, and that's done. The budget's not finalized, but I'm pretty sure it'll stick the way it is. The second thing I'm introducing is a law that says, for all time until the council changes it, you can't use taxpayer money to treat people differently based on their immutable characteristics, whether it's better or worse. You just can't do that. So that's a second thing. And the third was to limit the abilities of the mayor to move money around. From right now, she can move $500,000 without city council authorization. And I'll move that number down to $100,000. That, okay, fine, she can move $100,000 around to get things done. But if you need to move more than that, you should come to city council and get authority, which is exactly how the Jacksonville Charter and any government that makes any sense operates. The mayor's response was, that's going to halt government and freeze things and make it impossible for me to do my job. And she even called it insulting. DL, guess how many times in the last year the mayor had to move more than $100,000 around? 12 times. So it's not like this is a daily thing that's going to halt government. 12 times to come to city government. At $200,000, it was 4 times. So, I mean, we'll find a number that makes some sense. But if you're big dollars around, you should come to the people who write the budget, who have the power of the purse. That's the whole point of checks and balance government.
Gotcha. So those 12 times, and you don't have to list all of them, but like, were any of them significant things that like, so maybe they don't bring the whole government to a halt, but maybe they do create a huge impediment. You know, because I don't know what those 12 items were. Maybe like, you know, if this had been in place before those 12 instances, would there have been anything that would have been critical that couldn't have been done?
No. The answer is no. I mean, if things like moving a Confederate monument or hiring a DEI director, it's literally stuff that we haven't authorized that the mayor then wanted to go move money. There are fewer more capital type improvement projects, including some money she shifted around to get rid of, some stuff that just needed to be done in neighborhoods. But I mean, there's no reason you couldn't come to us in an emergency and almost always pass and have that in a week. I mean, no capital improvement project is like, okay, we have to get this done right now. In addition to that, if you do have an emergency, there's emergency funds to get things done. So her argument lacks merit. She wants to go and just move money where she'd like to. It's a power play and not come to city council. And that's just not how our government works or should work.
Gotcha. Now, one of the other comments that she made, and I don't remember if it was in the video that we just played. I think she said it there, but I also heard it in a, I think she was on, what's that? She was on a podcast somewhere and she was
Connect. Yeah. She was on the local PR station. Yeah.
Yeah. So she mentioned that it was political. And I think Carlucci also said political in that video we just played as well. So in terms of asking you, I obviously, if I say, is it political, you're going to say no. So let me ask you a better question.
Sure.
You were around for the previous mayor, correct? Were there things that you did that, that were similar with that mayor? Because I would judge it and say, okay, well, you're going to say it's not political because that's what everybody says. So to get to the truth, then I can only compare you against you and say, okay, well, the previous mayor was a Republican as you are. So were there instances where you did something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. Have Lenny Curry, the former mayor of Jacksonville, on your show and ask him how it was like being a mayor with Rory Diamond as city councilman. So the first thing, I voted against all of his budgets. And I, just like I am now, attacking pieces of Donna Deegan's budgets I don't like, I'm attacking pieces of her budgets. Also, Lenny Curry just didn't have as many kind of like outrageous things in the budget, but I absolutely voted against all of them, spoke up against them, tried to strip them out. This is also the first time I've been on the finance committee where I've had the platform to go ahead and get these things done. Secondly, when Mayor Curry was mayor, there was this attempt to sell JEA as a kind of theoretical matter. I think government shouldn't be in the business of doing a lot of these things. So I was on principle it's fine, but the way it was attempted, I absolutely went after it left and right and led the investigation into the entire JEA debacle. So there's no way that anybody can say I don't hold Republicans and Democrats equally accountable. I spent most of my first 4 years holding a Republican administration accountable.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And like, unfortunately, sometimes it's just hard to keep up with city council. And sometimes I focus on the things that get the most attention in the news, which are not always the most important things necessarily, like a budget or something like that.
Yeah. It's hard. That's why these local elections, when you get to the, you turn over the ballot and there's those names and you don't know who any of them are, it's actually worth doing a little bit of work there because the people at the lowest level of government often have the biggest impact on your day-to-day life, whether or not it's gets paid, whether there's a stop sign or frankly whether your property taxes are going to go up.
Right, absolutely. That's why I tell you folks, get down to city council and yell at them, or praise them if they happen to, on occasion, every once in a while, in that rare moment, do something that's good.
Yeah, well, there's broken.
Sorry, Rory, I'm a critic.
That's all good. It doesn't bother me in the slightest.
So, okay, so you voted in favor of stadium improvements, correct?
No, I was on military duty.
Oh, you were? Okay, so you didn't actually vote. How would you have voted?
So I mean, the package as it was presented, I had serious problems with it. In particular, there was a community benefits agreement that had $150 million of city spending that was totally unnecessary. In other cities, these the state or the county comes forward with money in Jacksonville under Florida law. The state can't come forward with any money, so it's entirely city money. And the mayor added on top of the $775 million that they wanted to have for the stadium improvements, added another $150 million of city money for this nebulous ideas of workforce housing and all the rest. And I immediately came out against that deal to come out and do that. And so the CBA was just totally unacceptable. I would have voted against it as it was written, and I'm fighting it still today. So they created a little committee for the community benefits agreement. They want to put it into next year's budget. I can't believe that I'm sitting here having to fight it for a second time and try and get rid of it for a second time. But that's exactly what I'm going to be doing.
What should they be doing? Like if so, well, let's say we're talking, like, let's say that a bunch of citizens right now here in Jacksonville are watching you talk, and you're saying like, look, I've been critical of the prior administration. I'm critical of this administration. You know, I'm really looking at the budget. I don't like some of the things that I'm seeing. What things would you look at and say, I like that? That's good for Jacksonville. And maybe even if it's, you know, you and I may disagree, and that's fine. But even if it's something like you say, we need to spend money here.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't been afraid on occasion to say, okay, this makes sense. If government is going to do this, then let's do it well. The best example I can give you is animal control and protective services. So the government has a monopoly on the right to go in and save animals on private property, right? They came in, they said, we have this right. No one else. There's no like vigilante animal control protection. So if the government is going to take that and say, we're the only ones who are going to do it, then you at least have to have enough officers to go out and do it. So I sponsored an amendment for this budget to add 14 animal control officers and other folks for animal control. You know, and the kennel cleaners and the people who work with the public and the dogs and all the rest to do it properly. Because again, if we're going to say only the government can do this, and we're leaving dogs, you know, literally stranded on highways, strung up in backyards, in dangerous situations, in locked hot cars, and even though people are calling, to me, that's unacceptable, right? You have to. We either have a right to private action to save a dog out of a hot car, or we don't, in which case the government ought to fund it properly. And so that's one. Another one I think that we don't do a very good job of is juvenile justice reform. So we've got kids, you know, typically I was a federal prosecutor, and I can tell you that nobody decides at age 22 or 23 to be a career criminal, right? It's often problems at home. Kids start to make bad decisions at 11, 12, 13, 14 in that zone. And then they make worse and worse and worse problems as their life goes on, eventually spirals into literally a life of crime, often ending in lifetime incarceration. So I think that we ought to, as a community, focus on these kids who are 11 through 14 years old who make their first mistake and invest money in them. It's a good financial deal for the city if that's the only thing you care about, to go ahead. It's much cheaper to help a kid who's 12 years old get the resources he needs and mental health care he needs than it is to incarcerate him for the rest of his life. But it's also, in my opinion, just the right thing to do. If again, we're going to be in control of a government is going to have a monopoly on crime prevention the way they do, then we ought to work with these kids who are 11 through 14, 15, 16 to make sure that we're investing there. It's much better for that kid and that kid's family, and much better for the community and crime reduction, and then much better for fiscal conservatives, and you pay a lot less. So those are two areas where I've been fine with saying, yeah, let's jump in and do a better job and spend more taxpayer money in those two places.
Gotcha. Following that, it's kind of like that saying that we hear, better to build boys than to mend men, which would apply also to young ladies as well. I don't think there's a clever saying necessarily for them.
Well, most crime is committed by men. So,
right.
And most juvenile crime that's serious is committed by boys. And so that's why it makes sense to invest there.
So what kind of investments do you think would help? Like here in Jacksonville specifically?
Yeah, you know, a lot of it is just making sure it's properly coordinated. So if a 12-year-old like shoplifts from Walmart gets in a fight at school and gets arrested, they're taken immediately to the big jail downtown. Not taken to the juvenile assessment center. To me, we ought to unlock that and take unless it's like a very serious felony. If they're using a gun or something, different rules. But for the rest, take them to a juvenile assessment center. While they're there at the juvenile assessment center, I think we ought to actually have mental health counselors who can be like, who are you? Why are you getting in fights at school? What's going on at home? Are you coordinated to other services? And then have the actual, you know, computer program to be like, okay, here's what's available. Let's get you an appointment. Here's what's the part of town you live in, and then follow up to make sure that they showed up. Because if we don't do that there, then it falls onto the judges who deal in juveniles, and they're just simply outmatched by the system. They don't have the time, the resources, the attention to actually make sure that kids who are getting in trouble get the resources they need. So that's how I would employ it. And you'll actually see that from me. I'll take a big step forward in proposing some of these solutions over the next 6 months or so, because I just think we're doing a very bad job of it locally.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I would like to see it. And look, I'm a libertarian. We say taxation is theft, and we totally mean it. However, however, we are not near anything that I would consider to be a libertarian utopia. So I look at it and I say, well, let's get rid of some things that we shouldn't be spending money on, period. Right. And then for the time being, let's at least divert funds where it might be more appropriate, especially if it's at the local level. And I tend to be a little bit more tolerant when it comes to the local level because, as a citizen, I can go in and I can have pretty much direct access to the city council members. Like I can go in and I can talk to you face to face at city council meeting. I can get you on a podcast, my podcast, to come and say, "Hey, what's going on with this?" I can email you directly, and I have, and I've gotten responses. So I feel like when it comes to spending money, and this is a little bit of heresy for the libertarians, but when it comes to spending money locally, I think that there might be opportunities where it would make more sense and a lot less sense in other areas. Speaking of, what other issues should citizens be like, hey, we don't need to be spending money there? Because at the end of the day, $185,000 for the chief diversity officer. I think that's what it was. Like in terms of the budget, that does seem to be a bit of a smaller amount. So what other things, might we look forward to, Mr. Diamond or anybody else putting forward and saying, we don't really need to spend this money?
Yeah, so I think what you're going to see, at least for the next couple of years in Jacksonville, is that spending is going to keep going up because the mayor is going to keep proposing bigger and bigger budgets. And I just don't think that council has got the stomach to actually do what you're talking about, which is to cut big things. So if you are looking to cut big things, it's going to be on these economic development deals that the city keeps on spending 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars on developments. And I've got the largest record of 18-1 votes. So there's 19 members of the city council, and I've got something like over 200 18-1 votes on economic development deals because I always vote against them because they don't make any sense. You've got a company who wants to come into Jacksonville, and they're willing to spend like $5-10 million to bring them here. And they're picking and choosing over some other company that maybe is not well connected or doesn't know, or a local company that's trying to compete against them. To me, that's like, it's unacceptable. I just don't believe in that. So the economic development deals would be it's the soft underbelly of this budget. So that's one. The second is to look at our school board. It's not very sexy to look at the school board, but their budget is huge. It's and they've raised taxes on the city of Jacksonville twice. 0.5 cents for a capital improvement plan, which is an absolute disaster right now. Another 0.5 cent in order to increase teacher pay. And they passed the first one saying that they'd have more money to pay teachers more. So both of these things, in my opinion, should have failed. I voted against both. I spoke up against both. But the school board has got billions of dollars that they are misspending. They've got an enormous number of senior bureaucrats who are making between $150,000, $200,000 a year that we don't need these. There's an enormous savings to be had over there. If you're looking to cut at the top end of the bureaucracy of the Duval County School Board, and probably every school board that's in a big city in America, that's where I would go.
Do you think with the elections as they've happened recently that we're going to see anything like that with the people coming in?
I sure hope so. So for people who don't know, Duval County School Board has flipped from, kind of like moderate conservative to, and some leftists on there to, pretty much dominated by Republican conservatives, but both sense of conservative and fiscal, but really strongly socially conservative. And, I supported those conservatives to get on there. And I do think they're going to hold our new superintendent accountable for a more efficiently managed district. You're going to have to, The school district has been shrinking as far as public students go since 2013-14 school year, but the budgets haven't shrunk. The school footprint hasn't shrunk. None of these things have shrunk, along with, school choice is exploding across the country, but is especially strong here, where more than half of the kids in the Duval County School District area are in some sort of school choice, whether it's magnet, homeschool, private school, charter schools. And so it's just natural that the local school district would shrink also. And it just hasn't happened very fast. And so hopefully the new school board will efficiently manage that. And to be clear, that means closing failing schools. Geniuses of choice is it gives us the ability to say that's an F school, it ought to be shut down. And over here, like the Atlantic Beach Elementary, where you have an A+ school that's well supported, you're like, now we can give even more resources to this great school that's doing a good job. So that's the market actually working. Hopefully, the school district will also do that.
Gotcha. So, interesting question here from actually, I believe one of your constituents here. That Liberty lady, and I'm gonna put it up on the screen here. So she says, how does Rory feel about the Duval GOP coming about? I'm gonna read that. Coming about conservatives who supported Eric Parker, that pesky libertarian, in that last local election. So basically, just to give a little cap for anybody that's listening that may not be familiar with Jacksonville politics, the Libertarian Party ran 3 candidates for city council. Unfortunately, all of them lost. Eric Parker he made the most noise. He ran against Terrence Freeman for at large one. It was at large. Yeah, I think it was at large one.
Right.
And there were a number of Republicans that actually ended up supporting him, and they got in trouble with the local GOP. And it still seems to be an issue. I keep hearing rumblings and complaints about people and stuff like that. So what is your take on the GOP like chastising their own for that support?
I mean, to me, that's just kind of like inside baseball. Like it's not breaking through out into the public in any relevant way. The reason why that race was so high profile is that there was no Democrat in the race, so the Libertarian was the other candidate. It's I love some of the ideas that the Libertarian Party brings forward. The problem is that they so rarely win elections, and I mean that in a respectful way, which is to say, if you're going to actually win elections, you have to put forward candidates. And so, to your credit, the party did that and brought forward some candidates who were out there fighting, going door to door, doing more traditional campaigns. But the persuasion argument needs to be there too. So what's the difference between a libertarian and a Republican? I don't think most people really have their head around that. It's just like some other party that doesn't like government.
Right. Right. I mean, that's pretty fair. And no, I take your criticism fair. Like it, politics is tough. It's a full contact sport.
It is.
And it does require some money, and and I think it in some ways requires libertarians to do things that for some of them they look and say, well, no, that's not how it should work, so therefore I don't want to play that way. And it's like, well, you kind of got to play to some degree. You can be the underdog and find your own niche and maybe break through, but it's a lot harder. So it's a challenge all around. So I'm not offended by it whatsoever.
I will say this though, I think people in the inside game, right, actually respect people who stick by their principles. And I mean this very genuinely. I've never voted to raise a tax or a fee in my entire life. I never will. Everybody knows that I'm against taxes and that I want taxes to be lower, that the budget's too big. I'm like painful broken record about this. And so when Lenny Curry wanted to raise the local option gas tax, double it essentially, another 7 cents a gallon, whereas all the other city council people were given this real full court press to persuade them. I had a very honest, decent conversation with the last mayor of Jacksonville, a Republican, and he said, look, I know you're going to vote against this. And that's how the conversation started. And a lot of times lobbyists will come to my office and chat with me, and they'll be like, look, we know you're a no. We get that. Tell us what about this you don't like. Tell us how, and what a great place to start. Nobody's mad at me for voting my conscience. In fact, they come in knowing I'm probably a no for whatever thing they're trying to do. And I tell all new candidates, I was like, look, you don't have to let go of your principles. Just be consistent. And so long as you're consistent, people tend to be okay. I mean, sometimes you're going to make some people mad. That's just life. But most of the time in that inside game that I think libertarians have struggled sometimes playing is that you don't have to just abandon your principles. You just have to be consistent with them over time and let people understand them.
Right. No, I agree. I think it's tongue tied there. I think it's an interesting point that people come to your office and they lead with, hey, I know you're going to vote no. So tell me why, which to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that basically says, I'm coming to you so that I can figure out how I can get your support. So if I understand that you're going to be a no, I want to know why you're a no. And maybe we can modify what we're doing to get you to come around to a yes. Is that really what's going on?
No, I don't think so. I think they know I'm going to vote no, especially like an economic development deal or a new tax or something like that. They know I'm a no.
So why would they come in if they can't change your mind, why come?
I think they're trying to change the quality or tone of my no. So I can be very loud, very aggressive,
Gotcha.
and fight something and kill it oftentimes. And then sometimes I just don't have the support to do that. So I think they come in there like, look, can you not like embarrass our people at the dais? Can you not go on Twitter and the local news and have a press conference, trying to set everything on fire on this particular issue? And look, the truth is you can't fight every battle every single day. I fight some battles. You have to pick them in order to be effective. And so sometimes those conversations are really about like, can we not be the fight for you for this month? And I wasn't going to do it anyway, so fine.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. And look, I tell you this, I appreciate any council member, and hopefully the council members see this. I appreciate any council member that wants to, get out there in the public and say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's my opinion about this. Here's what I think, you need to know. And if that means you, Mr. Diamond, you're going out there and you're like, look, the mayor, she's got this terrible budget and here's all the things wrong with it. And I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to do a press conference. I'm going to get out there in social media because that helps get my attention. Otherwise, I have to go and try to read through everything, or watch all the city council meetings. And that can be a very labor intensive thing to do, which we know citizens aren't doing. So it's a little easier to go public. And if the mayor does the same thing, like which she kind of did, she went around and she went on shows and I was able to watch them and kind of get a sense of where she was. I was able to get a little bit of a sense of where you were, and it made me more knowledgeable. So I appreciate it personally. And yeah, it does cause problems, because maybe you're coming out and you're like, yeah, so-and-so, they got this terrible idea, right?
I
Maybe
mean,
you're being very noisy about it.
it's the great challenge because a lot of the people on that dais and even the mayor, you can be very friendly with, and that's totally fine. And I have no trouble turning off political brain and friend brain and being like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. But it does create tension and it makes people mad. There's a green room right next to the dais, and I've had city council people yell at me in there, and I'm like, look, I get you're mad, but this is just it's policy out there. It's not personal.
Right. So, all right. So here's my final question, then we'll wrap it up and let you get on about your day. I am the chair of the Libertarian Party here in Duval, and we have, to my knowledge, no libertarians have been asked to be involved in any level of government. So how do we get more involved in the government other than getting somebody elected? What kind of things can we do to get our ideas kind of at least heard a little bit more from city council?
What drives me crazy about this question is if we really cared about diversity, equity, and inclusion, then someone would have reached out to you and said, hey, we don't have the libertarian perspective on any of these boards or on any of these things. So that drives me crazy because that's true diversity, right? Intellectual diversity on these things, life experience, et cetera. But what I would do is the mayor does have appointment authority on a lot of boards, and so does the city council. So apply. I rarely look at someone's political background when they've applied to be on some board. If you're willing to volunteer, give your time, invest your time and effort, then you're getting in. And I 19 colleagues all sort of agree on that. And so apply, you'll get on boards. You can have a huge impact. The Jacksonville Journey, which is an anti-crime program, is coming back. I don't think anybody has a libertarian perspective on that. I would apply to be on that board, on the housing board, any of those, especially ones where, the libertarian perspective would be helpful. So anything related to like property values, there's a value adjustment board where, property owners come in and say, look, my house isn't worth that much. You're charging me too many taxes. I would love to have a libertarian on there to say, yeah, I agree. The property owner's right. Or anything where you're defending property rights would be great. So that's what I would do. Go online, coj.net, coj.net. Look for the appointments, see what's available, and apply.
Got it. All right. Well, I'll be looking and I'll see if I can't get a few people to apply, and we'll see where we go. In the meantime, if when diversity comes up, if you just happen to want to point it out and be like, hey, I want to point out we don't have a lot of political diversity here, there's no libertarians, you're more than welcome to make that comment in any of those meetings that you're in. You go right ahead and plug us if you need to. Okay. I got you back on that. Any final words from you, sir?
Oh no, I just appreciate you having me on talking about this stuff. Sometimes I feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall, so it's nice to talk to folks who have as much disgust for big government as I do, or even more. So
More, definitely.
having your brains right. Appreciate that.
So, all right, sir. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm going to put you backstage. If you need to go, you can. Otherwise, I'll chit chat with you in just a moment after I close out the show. So thank you again for joining me so early in the morning. Of course, you're military, so you probably are already up and, did a whole bunch of exercises and, read the news and a whole bunch of other things before you even got on the show.
Yep.
So.
I already got my run in. Thanks, man.
All righty, man. Have a good one. All right, folks. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show, found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel at youtube.libertydad.com or my Rumble channel. If you prefer, you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now,